The Swiss-flagged sailboat Nausicaa was ready to continue its 2025 tour of the Mediterranean after visiting Italy and western Greece earlier in the summer. While Executive Officer Michel Current made the boat ready in Skiathos, the captain and 2 other crew members assembled in Geneva for the trip to Athens. With a long layover in Athens, the crew headed out to the Cape of Sunion and the Temple of Poseidon, where they prayed to the god of the sea for a safe voyage. As the sun set, the crew left Athens to meet Nausicaa in the port of Skiathos. Following a full day of travel, the crew stashed their belongings and rested before an early morning departure.
For this leg of the voyage, the ship's crew includes Peter Dennant, mate and ship's engineer Guido Albertelli, mate, historian, and philosopher Michel Current, executive officer and chef extraordinaire Regis Menetre, captain and cruise director.
Nausicaa left the port of Skiathos the next morning, headed northeast to the island of Skopelos. After passing the lighthouse Guruni on the northeast corner, the captain set a course along the north side of the island.
As we made our way down the north coast of Skopelos, Captain Regis started mumbling something about passing Mamma Mia Church. Having never seen the movie, I had no idea what he was talking about. He whipped out his iPhone and called up the video where Meryl Streep sings "The Winner Takes It All" to Pierce Brosnan on a cliff in front of a large rock outcropping with a church at the top. An hour later, we were passing the Agios Lonis Church where the scene was filmed. Unfortunately, the song had nestled in the captain's brain. He sang or hummed it for days. Continuing along the coastline of Skopelos, Nausicaa's crew experienced excellent weather as they made their way to the island of Alonissos and the small port of Stenivala on the south side.
During the entire cruise, 2 small black burgee flags flew from Nausicaa's port spreader halyard. These were the flags of the Brotherhood of the Coast, a global fraternal organization whose members have sworn to each other their friendship and loyalty, anchored by their common love of the sea. Captain Regis, whose battle name is Rock Hopper, is a member of the Lausanne Table in Switzerland, and mate Peter, battle name Upwind, is a member of the Chesapeake Bay Table in Virginia, USA. Both sailors met during Nausicaa's first tour of the United States in 2023. Regis left Nausicaa in Peter's care for repairs in late 2023, and again in May of 2024. The 2 brothers then sailed their boats along the northeast U.S. coast in June of that year. As a result of their evolving relationship, Regis invited Peter to sail with him in Greece.
In Stenivala, the price of dockage was having a glass of ouzo with the owner of the adjacent restaurant. In the morning, after cold showers and a fine breakfast, the crew threw off the lines and left the Sporade Islands behind. This day they were headed to the island of Skyros. But first, there was a pause in a cove on Rhynia Skyro for a late lunch and swimming. Then, onto the west side of Skyros for a late afternoon anchorage in the cove of Paralia Pefkos.
Early the next morning, we found that Nausicaa had dragged at anchor overnight. The weather had been beautiful for the first days, but unsettled weather was headed our way. We weighed anchor and headed a few kilometers southeast to the port of Skyros at Linaria. As soon as the boat was secured, the captain commandeered a cab for a tour of the island. After stopping for provisions, we came to rest at Pano Piazza, the upper square, for refreshments before proceeding up steep streets to the monastery of St. George. Unfortunately, it was closed for renovations, so we inspected what we could, started our descent, and headed to Stefano's beachside restaurant for lunch. Light rain started just as we arrived, but the restaurant screens kept the elements from getting in.
Captain Regis had us up early the next morning for an 85 nautical mile to the island of Tinos. good winds blew in our favor, and after a full day of sailing, we arrived at the cove of Paralia Livada Beach. Other than a few people on the beach, we were alone. After sunset, the stars danced across the sky.
It was Saturday morning with a crew change scheduled for the afternoon in Mykonos. Michel was headed back to Switzerland and Ivan Pereira was coming to take his place. We enjoyed a brief meal, weighed the anchor and headed to Mykonos, which was just a few nautical miles away. The port of Mykonos was bright and busy with traffic from the many cruise ships anchored in the harbor. Once there, we set the anchor not far from the Paralia Megali Amos beach and made the dinghy ready to go to shore. Later, the captain and Guido took Michel to the airport and returned a few hours later with Evan and provisions. In the evening, the four-man crew went to shore for dinner and sightseeing. Peter had been musing about a hamburger at the Cadena restaurant. He found exactly what he had been thinking about. After a fabulous dinner, while walking the narrow streets, the crew was lured by the low thumping of dance music to the party at the Internet restaurant and club. It was a warm Saturday night and the crowded courtyard was filled with locals and tourists celebrating the weekend. We stayed, drank and danced with the crowd well into the night. After a midnight dinghy ride back to Nausicaa, it started to rain. We wondered if the party at Internis had survived the rain.
We slept in late the next morning because we did not have far to go on this day. We weighed the anchor and sailed 5 nautical miles east to the ancient ruins on Delos Island, the birthplace of Apollo and Artemis. The day was warm and the sky was blue. We visited the large open Doric theater and the houses of the wealthy that lived in the theater district. This included the House of Dionysus and the House of Dolphins, named for their prominent mosaics. Delos is one of the most important mythological, historical, and archaeological sites in Greece. The ongoing excavations in the island are among the most extensive in the Mediterranean. Between 900 BC and 100 AD, Delos was a major cultural center in the central Aegean Sea. We toured the Temple of the Delians, dedicated to Apollo, the Temple of Isis, and the Temple of Hera. Many of the excavated artifacts were displayed in the Archaeological Museum of Delos. After hours of touring the extensive ruins, we returned to Nausicaa and took a short ride to a cove on the island of Rinaya, just a mile west of Delos. Here we enjoyed dinner and a clear night filled with the constellations of autumn. To the west, we could see the bright lights of Mykonos.
The next morning, we awoke early for a 70 nautical mile journey to the island of Fournois. The early start was also our attempt to stay ahead of poor weather that was due to move in from the west. Some late showers affected us after passing Ikaria Island, but it was not enough to require raincoats. Making good time, Captain Regis decided a swimming break was in order and headed for a small cove on the north side of Fimena Island. In it, we found a small Greek Orthodox church and some residential buildings on the hill. The small community of this cove seemed to be deserted, as there was no one around. We anchored, went swimming, and took showers off the back of the boat. Not far away, on the west side of Fimena, was our destination, Porno e Corseon. Corseon refers to its history as a refuge for pirates during the Middle Ages. There was no room along the seawall for Nausicaa. The captain of a nearby sailboat allowed us to tie up next to him for the evening. After securing the boat, we went ashore to find the most charming village yet. Now that tourist season had ended, restaurant owners came out to the street to tempt us inside. While we sat for drinks, outside a tavern along the main street, the rain we had been running from all day finally caught up with us. Now, hungry from our day of sailing, we selected Nikos Taverna for dinner. We selected freshly caught red snapper and squid. The owner's husband used a hairdryer to thaw it.
Nausicaa struggled to pull away from the pier, with strong winds pinning us against the adjacent boat. With some help from a local boat, we departed safely. We headed south through the Fournoy Strait. After emerging from the strait, the wind calmed down. We continued south and east, headed for the small island of Arcoi with hopes of finding a mooring in the small port there. We were disappointed. There was no room. We turned south and headed along the coast looking for a secure cove. A few miles down the coast, we arrived at a cove on the southeast side of Macronisi Island. Other than the goats on the island, there was no one else around.
In the morning, we weighed the anchor and headed southwest to Patmos Island and the port of Scala, where we easily found an open mooring. Our intrepid captain rented a car and we made our way up to the highest point of the island to the monastery of St. John the Theologian. Unfortunately, it was closed but would reopen the next morning. We walked around the monastery's fortified exterior and took in the village of Kora. The view of the port from this vantage point was spectacular. With time to kill, we toured the southern part of the island, which found us at rest at Petra Beach. Adjacent to the beach is the rock of Kilikatsu, an ancient rock once used to worship Aphrodite. I searched for the goddess of love, but could not find her there. The stairs, carved in the rock by the ancients, have survived to this day. We concluded our day with an exceptional dinner at Votris restaurant along the port of Scala's waterfront, not far from the boat.
In the morning, we enjoyed a simple breakfast at a small cafe before heading back to the monastery of St. John. The monastery was open along with its attendant vendors. The smell of frankincense was heavy in the air around the entrance. We gained admission and spent hours touring through the complex that dates back 1100 years. In the museum, we saw devotional works of art that exhibited an exceptional level of craftsmanship that surely took a lifetime of learning and practice to produce. Our next stop was at the Cave of the Apocalypse. After St. John had been exiled by the Romans, he and other Christians were banished to the desolate island of Patmos. St. John sheltered in a cave complex halfway between Scala and Cora. In this cave, he is said to have received visions of the final days of earth. He compiled his writings into what became known as the Book of Revelations in the Bible. The cave and the monastery are two of Christianity's most sacred sites.
It was late morning when we left the cave. The rental car had to be returned by noon, so we scurried back to the boat and readied her for departure. After untangling Nausicaa's anchor from an adjacent boat's anchor, we headed south, passing Petra Beach, and rounded the southern tip of the island. Not far up the southwest coast, we found a secluded cove, where we enjoyed a midday meal. It was late in the afternoon when we started heading to the southeast for the island of Kos, but we would have to anchor this night. Arriving after sunset, we pulled into a crowded anchorage on the south side of Archangelos Leroux and found a spot for the night.
It was Friday morning. With a major crew change scheduled for Saturday in Kos, all efforts were focused on getting to the port, now 32 nautical miles away. With many rental boats due to return, the Kos Island Marina was full. Captain Regis found a spot in the old harbor, but it was first come, first served, so time was of the essence. The wind was strong as Nausicaa left the anchorage, but after a time, it started to wane. Captain Regis ordered a sail change to the Code 55. The wind continued to lessen over the next hour, so the captain directed the crew to douse the Code 55 sail and hoist the spinnaker. The sail changes kept the boat on schedule to arrive in Kos early in the afternoon. Upon entering the old harbor at 2 p.m., the crew moored the boat in front of the Narantia castle and set about cleaning it for the upcoming crew change. After cleaning the boat and themselves, the crew assembled one last time at a Stakos seafood and grill restaurant for an evening meal. Crewmate Peter left early the next morning, followed by Guido and Ivan on Sunday. New crew members arrived that weekend, and the Odyssey of Nausicaa continued to the end of October.